Hello, hello. So it's all kicking off in B Corp world by all accounts. So Dr. Bronner's the highest scoring B Corp in the world have decided that they will not renew their certification this time around. And that's cool. You do you. But yeah, I mean the socials are blowing up, man. It's all kicking off. And it's kind of interesting. And the here we go. Let's actually bring the post up. There we go. So this is the original post from Dr. Bronner's. So the highest scoring B Corp in the world, not renewing due to what they see as a lack of integrity in the standard. And the full article is here. Nice bit of PR on Bloomberg. Where they're basically saying, look, they feel that lax standards, particularly as pertaining to supply chain, is the thing that they really are taking issue with. So, they're saying B Corp allows for greenwashing because it fails to capture the impact of large corporations with exploring supply chains. Well, I mean, it's fair enough. Yes, that is a reasonable concern. But we've got to remember that actually B Corp is a certification of a company's performance, primarily. Like, how do you perform? Less so, about your full supply chain. But obviously that is a consideration. And indeed, on the B Corp assessment, there are questions, particularly if you're in the manufacturing sector or wholesale retail, there are questions that do ask you about your supply chain. A bit more on that later on. Brianne, who I'd like to consider to be a mate of mine, she's also, kind of jumped in on this and said, look, she gets a lot of questions. So obviously, Etique was a business that she founded a few years ago, first certified as a B Corp way back in 2015. I think they were possibly B Corp number 2 or 3 in New Zealand. So really, really early adopter. And she has since launched a new business called Incredibles, and she has no current plans to certify Incredibles as a B Corp, and that's cool. Now, with both of these articles, I guess one of the things that they also cite is the allowance of some large companies like Nespresso to become a B Corp, and it's it's controversial, possibly. Is Nespresso the world's best company? Ultimately owned by Nestle. Nestle has got a history of some very dodgy activity across, the globe in various ways, shapes, or forms. If you go and have a look on YouTube, there's a ton of videos on some of the activities that Nestle has been critiqued for. But I still feel that B Corp is one of the best, if not the best, framework that's out there for companies wanting to do better and possibly be amongst the best of companies around their social and environmental performance. So just, I guess, some thoughts on on why B Corp is still a thing. I think it's interesting just to reflect on the fact that Brianne had Etique was a very high scoring B Corp, and she is 100% focused on solving primarily environmental challenges within the sectors that she's been involved in. Dr. Bronner's clearly a very high performing company, and so it's interesting that the high performing companies and people who are high performing and very, 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 very much aligned around making impact are the ones who are sort of saying, "Hey, come on, B Corp, I think you can do more." I still think B Corp is a very, 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 very rigorous assessment tool. However, I've helped about 1/3 of the B Corps in New Zealand certify, and I've yet to really meet anyone go, "Man, that was super easy. Let's go do it again." I think it's worth reflecting with that on some of these bigger companies. Like if we look at Nespresso, so Nespresso, they, like, 80 out of 200 points is the current pass mark to be able to be a certified B Corporation. 84.3. These guys, they've snuck in realistically. And if we look at Unilever, Unilever, ANZ. 82.7. So the two like really, really big entities that a lot of people have kind of gone, how can these guys be a B Corp? You know, they're massive companies, you know, da 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 da. You know, I know from having spoken to some senior leaders at Unilever and Nespresso, it took, you know, each of those companies, it took them about 3 years to retune the business to get them to a position where they've just snuck in to meet the minimum requirements of B Corp. And so I think that's worth noting that they didn't just turn up and pass B Corp. They actually had to put a ton of effort in, you know, to meet the minimum standard. It's interesting seeing a couple of comments on LinkedIn, people sort of saying, "Oh, well, you know, yeah, you know, we're not a B Corp, but if we did, we would absolutely nail it." And it's like, well, would you? Go prove it. You know, it's kind of interesting to say, well, we're better than them, but actually, we haven't gone through the process. You know, I'm not saying that Unilever or Nespresso are perfect. Far from it, I'm sure. But I think, you know, that is the bigger thing to consider here. That there is no perfect business. You know, Patagonia is held up as one of the world's best businesses in terms of their social and environmental performance, and they certainly do amazing stuff. They're a very, very high scoring B Corp, but are they perfect? No, and no one is perfect. No entity is perfect. You know, if we look at the negative impact that any business makes, there's pretty much there's always going to be some kind of negative impact. So I think we're kind of living in a bit of a false reality if we think that somehow we're going to have all these perfect businesses that make no impact. So I think that's just a bit of a positioning point. So I think, yeah, some of these high-performing B Corps who are kind of like, yeah, look, we're done with B Corp. We're now out the other side. Well, you know, good on you. You've gone beyond B Corp, and that's kind of what we want companies to do. Like, you know, ultimately, we want companies to become so good that they don't need the framework anymore. But I think there's a real risk of, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater here by going, well, you know, just because we're doing really, really well and we're doing fantastic, then, you know, the framework's rubbish. I think it's also interesting when we look at one of the things that a lot of people were criticizing Nespresso for was it's kind of like, you know, how can this company that sells, you know, their products have got single-use plastic and, you know, recyclable pods, and, you know, they were absolutely lambasted. Well, how can this company be a B Corp? Well, you know, Dr. Bronner's still using plastic bottles. Yes, they are packaged in 100% post-consumer recycled bottle, but it's still plastic. And okay, yes, it's recycled plastic, but, you know, there's increasing concerns around what plastic is doing for us, you know, as humans and for the planet. You know, we can get down, and I think this is the thing, you know, we want to challenge companies to be better, but when we're sort of nickel and diming it and really, really trying to squeeze the lemon, and I guess accusing is like a strong word, but we're you know, it's like we're throwing rocks at people for not being perfect. It's like there's no perfect company. This is the highest scoring B Corp, and they're still using plastic packaging. A lot of people would go, well, how can they even be a B Corp? On, you know, if we follow the same tack as how people were criticizing Nespresso. So yeah, it's interesting, you know. Some other thoughts and reflections, like, you know, no one has ever said that B Corp is perfect, or the certification is perfect. Like, it's run by humans. From research and understanding I've done in terms of actually how B Corp, the B Corp certification is, I guess, designed and created. You know, there's quite a bit of consultation, research goes in to enable it to become a thing. There is, you know, global standards committees. B Corps around the world can lobby. They can have conversations with their B Labs, with the standards team. There's regional standards advisory groups. You know, so it's not like this body that just sits there and dictates how things could and should be. You know, there's a ton of things on the B Corp framework that I personally don't agree with, or the approach that they're taking towards solving that problem. I don't think that's the best way to do it. But, you know, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. The overarching, I think, like the really big thing that B Corp brings is that it is social. You know, it's a measurement of social and environmental performance. It's globally recognized and it's independently verified. In a lot of the chats on socials, there's like, oh, you know, ISO is a better framework. Well, yeah, for environmental sustainability, ISO will be more in-depth and more rigorous than B Corp, but it looks at nothing to do with how you treat your staff and what you're doing in your community or how you treat your customers. I don't think really that I can't think of any customer-based certification that would prove that you look after your customers well. Or equally, you could be, child labor free certified or living wage certified, but you could be destroying the planet. So, that's why I've always liked B Corp. Is it looks at the business across all areas, not just one to the detriment of the other. The and along with that, a lot of people have criticized B Corp and said, hey, look, it's really easy. You can be doing really well, say environmentally, and be doing nothing socially, and kind of still sneak through as a B Corp. Again, in my experience, having helped certify quite a few companies, I've not come across one where they have been, absolutely nailing their social impact and been doing nothing environmentally. On the current standards, pretty much you have to be doing okay across all the areas. Well, in my experience, is almost every company I've worked with, they've been doing pretty good across everything. And to reach that 80 threshold, you pretty much have to be doing that. So, some other thoughts. I mean, the assessment is a US-based assessment. That sometimes brings criticism in this region, and that's reasonable. But again, the risk is if we try and create splinter movements and smaller, more nuanced and localized ones, they possibly lose their relevance and their, I guess, authority. There's people creating their own little frameworks, and that's great. But I just think the value is of this global framework where we can learn off each other and connect with each other, understand and work with people from around the world. What else have I got? I think the other big part of this for me is, I'd rather companies, B Corp is a framework. It's a great place for companies to be able to connect to and just start thinking about the good that they're doing. And I genuinely do believe that companies that even meet the 80 out of 200 threshold, people go, it's not even half marks. How hard can this thing be? It's like, well, go give it a go. If you're that convinced that it's that easy, go do it, go nail it. But I just think it's a really useful framework. And I guess perhaps the most important part of B Corp, and I think the secret sauce in B Corp is any certification in and of itself can become a tick box exercise. Some people have sort of said, oh, look, it's B Corp has become, pay to play. You pay your money and you get your cert. I don't believe that that's true. Yes, companies that have resource, whether that's people, money, time, whatever, like some of the bigger companies like Unilever, yes, they can put effort, financial resources, human capital into creating better results. But surely isn't that what we want them to be doing? I think, another thing just to ponder is that the vast majority of B Corps globally and locally here in New Zealand are small to medium businesses that are doing good and are genuinely wanting to be better companies and make more impact. There's a handful of large companies, and I've written an article about this previously. Isn't it better that let's see if I can find it over here. Isn't it better that we have some of these big companies in the in the tent, as it were, with people holding them accountable rather than them being outside the tent doing their own things. Like I guess a good example of that would be, say, Cadbury's, who dropped fair trade, and I know that there's criticisms on fair trade, and this is the thing, like there's criticism on every framework that's out there. Here we go. Finally found it. Probably should have got this one lined up before I started recording, but hey, that's how we roll. So yeah, like I wrote this article when Nespresso certified. Some people like, this is amazing, it's epic, this is so huge. Other people like, hey, yeah, look, this is the thing. But I'll put a link to this article. I'd rather that they were a B Corp and were held accountable rather than they chose their own framework. And I think this is one of the risks is we have some of these large companies go, oh yeah, we're doing our own thing, and away we go. the last thing, I think the big thing that I want to finish off on is it depends how you use B Corp. Like I say, if you just approach it as a tick box exercise where you're kind of like, are we doing these things? And typically a lot of companies will do this where they have one person just going through the assessment. It's like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. Right, we need to create this policy. Can someone go and check in on this? It's like, sure, you can do that. But there is the real value in B Corp is using it to really connect into the purpose of business and the purpose of an organization. And I think that is the real secret sauce of B Corp, that people are kind of missing the point here, or maybe not missing the point. It's like, that's the real thing to connect to, because that's how I first connected into B Corp, was working for large global organizations in the health sector that really should have been about making people better, actually didn't really give a damn and just wanted to maximize the amount of money that they're making. I think B Corp as a framework is a great step to help companies understand, okay, well, where do we make an impact, and so on and so forth. But the real key to B Corp is actually the it's like the spiritual, metaphysical change that can happen through B Corp. And this is I think the real key. And for me, the best example of that, or the phrase that comes to mind, is that there's a guy called Gus Speth, and he is an environmental lawyer, and he's got this great quote. He said, let's see if I can actually share this screen as well. Come on, technology. I'm not sure. How do we do that? Let's see. Stop, do that, and then let's present. Share screen. There we go. I think it's worth having that up there. This is old Gus Speth. So he said, I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems. But he was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And scientists do not know how to do that. And for me, that is at the heart of what B Corp can really, really, really do. If you use it as a tool to connect to the feeling of meaning, the purposeful performance, actually, why do we all come to work, and why is this meaningful to us, and how do we want to create change as a business, and how can we make a better contribution, then that is the real secret sauce to it. And I don't think that any other framework works or allows you to work in that manner. There is a secret sauce in B Corp that people connect to, that I haven't seen with other frameworks that are out there, like your ISOs. And I think for me, that's the real key. And what we need is for companies to connect to the more spiritual, metaphysical, like why, the feeling side of things, but with the measurement and reporting of, okay, and this is how we're fixing it, or this is what we're doing to it. I guess, yeah, some final thoughts. Greg Hart, mate of mine, farmer in Napier, east coast of North Island of New Zealand. He's got another great quote. It's like, humans shouldn't be aiming to minimize their impact on the planet. They should be aiming to maximize their positive impact. And I just think, yeah, let's focus on having the best party on the street. Let's focus on doing as much good as we can, and not really get too stuck in the weeds about, some of the detail of this stuff. Yeah. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents worth. What do you think? We're when you look at the growth of B Corp the last few years, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. A lot of people are getting a lot of value out of it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess actually the final point, or 2 points, that there's a lot of these guys shouldn't be a B Corp because things they've done in the past. Well, can we keep, how long do we hold people responsible for former crimes versus giving them a platform and a environment for them to want to be better and make amends for past things that they might have done. And the final thought is, from again, my sort of almost a decade of working with companies to get them B Corp certified, is doing good and making positive impact is very, very rarely black and white. The t-shirt I'm wearing, shout out to Nick from Etique. in Australia. Etique, B Corp certified fair trade t-shirt. This t-shirt is fundamentally better than buying a t-shirt off Temu or Shine, Shein, whatever it's called. Like, it just is. Yeah, it's made from more sustainably sourced, from the highest levels of sustainably sourced cotton in a manner that treats their staff with dignity and respect. And it's purchased through a company that is leading the way in terms of its social and environmental impact. So easy. One of my favorite sort of stories to refer to is the gentleman who invented the plastic bag. He did so back in the 50s and 60s because he recognized that there was a waste byproduct from the plastic manufacturing industry, that he thought he could create these plastic bags which would be indestructible and last forever, because he was so concerned with the amount of trees that people were cutting down to make paper bags. And for me, that is one of the classic stories around, what we think we're doing today is amazing for people and planet. Actually, in 50 years' time, might be proven to be a complete pile of rubbish. And so, yeah, I just think, let's approach this with a collective mindset of, let's all work to try and be better. Let's support each other as and where we can. Let's collectively work to solve some of these big problems that are facing you, that you're particularly concerned about, rather than trying to throw rocks at the people who aren't perfect. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Little addendum on the end there, because I forgot to add those 2 bits. But again, let me know. What do you think? Hit me up in the comments. What do you reckon? Does B Corp need to do more, or is B Corp doing enough in terms of helping people measure and report their impact? Catch you later.